Hello and welcome to another episode of Black Life Amplified. This is the virtual town hall series hosted by the African American Leadership Forum. My name is Brittany L. Wright with Insight News. And before we get started, I want to give a very special thank you to our sponsors, which include the Minneapolis Foundation, Northpoint Health and Wellness, and Children's Minnesota for making this town hall possible. I also want to say thank you to our community partners, which include Northpoint Health and Wellness, Children's Minnesota, Insight News, Gray Matter, the Spokesman-Recorder, and Minnesota Community Care. Now, if you didn't get a chance to check out our anniversary episode from 2 weeks ago, I highly encourage you go back and watch. Black Life Amplified has officially turned 1 year old, and our latest episode highlighted what we've accomplished over the past year and the importance of community conversation. You can view the full conversation on the African American Leadership Forum Facebook page and YouTube channel. Now, today's episode of Black Life Amplified is a reflection of the past year. It's been nearly a year since George Floyd was murdered in the city of Minneapolis, and the world is forever changed, with global calls for justice and accountability, an uprising that forever changed the face of the Twin Cities, an unprecedented conviction in an officer-involved shooting, and an insurmountable confrontation of grief as the world mourns a man whose life was taken far too soon and unjustifiably. Now, all of this has taken place in the middle of a global pandemic that was disproportionately taking Black lives to begin with. So that's where we're going to start in the framework of today's conversation. We're going to be talking later on with Attorney General Keith Ellison and a few other guests. But up first, we have Adriene Thornton from Children's Minnesota. Adriene, welcome back.
Good morning, Brittany.
Good morning. Glad to see you. Glad to see you. Now, please tell us what is going on with the governor's plans to lift the COVID-19 restrictions and why.
Well, I think he has the best of intentions in mind in making this decision. So because we have so many of our Minnesota community vaccinated, it seemed like a great idea to lift some of the masking requirements so that those that are vaccinated will have a little more freedom. And it is wonderful, as a vaccinated person, I do appreciate having more freedom and being able, to go out and not wear a mask. However, there's still a large portion of the community that's not vaccinated. Our children under 12 are not vaccinated. There are lots of adults that aren't vaccinated. And in addition to that, I don't know who's vaccinated. We have no way to determine, who's vaccinated in the community and who isn't. And in addition to that, we have some people using nefarious means to show that they're vaccinated. So I know that there was one business owner who was arrested for selling vaccine cards from his bar. He owns a local bar, and he was selling vaccine cards for $20 a card. So with all of that in mind, it's just really a precarious situation. I am not always removing my mask. It's very dependent. If I'm, in a room with a group of people that I know are vaccinated, I'll remove my mask. If I'm outdoors and I'm able to maintain my distance from other people that I don't know, I will take off my mask. But I am not comfortable enough to just take off my mask around everyone that I'm around just yet. And that's just, that's my personal take. I do appreciate the mayors of Minneapolis and St. Paul realizing that we needed to dial it back just a little bit because, again, everyone is not vaccinated yet. And so because we don't have passports like they do in other countries where you have to show your COVID-19 passport to prove that you are vaccinated before you go into businesses, we don't have that here. So we just don't have any way of knowing whether someone's vaccinated or not. We do it on the honor system, and we know that everyone is not honorable. So with that in mind, I just recommend that people be judicious in removing their mask and just, think about it before you do. If you're able to maintain your social distance and you're outside, I don't see a problem with you removing your mask. It's more of a problem when you're in an enclosed, confined space that doesn't have good airflow. That is when you really need to think twice about removing your mask.
Thank you, Adriene. Now, in previous episodes, we've talked about community immunity and how if about 70% of the population were to get vaccinated, then it would be safe for the majority of us to go outside without our masks. Have we reached anywhere close to 70%?
If you look at the overall numbers, I've heard several different numbers. Some say 67% for, the United States. There are others that say 80% or close to 80% for Minnesota. You really have to look at the data on a granular level. So I live in Rosemont, and that is where I spend the majority of my time. So in determining if we've reached that threshold or not, I really need to look at the data for Rosemont. When I go to other cities, I may look at it, but honestly, I spend about 95% of my time in my local community. And so I really need to know what the rates are there. Because again, overall is great, but it doesn't really speak to what's going on in your own community. So people should look at their own city and county and see what the rates are there, because they can be vastly different. Some of our more rural areas have a very low rate of vaccination. And so in those cities and counties, you want to be really careful and keep your mask on, because they have about 70% of their residents who are not vaccinated. And so you really need to look at where you are, where you're going, to determine if we've met that threshold or not.
And you bring up a really good point. I know in the city of St. Paul, there's definitely not a 70% rate of vaccination yet, which is why Mayor Carter made the decision that masks are still going to be worn in the city of St. Paul in public businesses, essentially. So if you're walking down the street, I think it's okay to be maskless. However, if you go into a grocery store, Target, gas station, restaurant, of course, if you're taking it off to eat, that's the exception. But there is still an expectation, and I appreciate that. I personally don't want to be in space with people who are not wearing their mask if I don't know them.
Right.
Now a lot of people around me are vaccinated. I'm in my vaccination process, but I'm not. It's not completed. It hasn't happened yet, and so, and I have a lot more access that I think than the everyday person. And so I think we really need to think about making vaccines more accessible and continuing to address the hesitancy that's out there as it relates to getting vaccinated in the first place. I know, in previous shows, I expressed my concerns with the Johnson & Johnson vaccine because, they were messing up baby lotion and soap and things like that, right? But it's not exactly the same Johnson & Johnson company when we talk about the context of the vaccine. And then I know there was additional hesitancy because it was taken off the market for a little bit due to there being a possible correlation between the vaccine and blood clots, but that's now been disproven and it's back on the market. So can you talk about the safety and the efficacy of the J&J vaccine?
Sure. And I just want to mention that this Saturday, to bring more immunity to the community, Children's Minnesota will be hosting a vaccine clinic in collaboration with the YWCA Minneapolis and St. Paul, and also with Ilhan Omar's office. And so we can post more information about that vaccine clinic later. But we will be offering, and I call it the Janssen spelled with a J, it's J, but it's a German name, the Janssen vaccine, because Janssen is the company that actually produced it. They were bought by Johnson & Johnson, so it's not actually Johnson & Johnson that's making and distributing the vaccine. It's the Janssen or Janssen company, Janssen. So very important.
Okay. That is important context.
Understand the context of that. Johnson & Johnson simply bought a company that was making money. Smart move. So that's out of the way. It is safe. It is safe and it is effective. What the studies found was that in certain women younger than 50 years old, they were developing blood clots. And in these women, they had certain other precursor diseases or functions going on. So if they had a low platelet count, or if there was something different about their platelet count, they were more likely to develop blood clots. And what the scientists realized is that the risk associated with getting the vaccine was still lower than the risk of those women developing those blood clots as a result of taking birth control. And so we know that there is a certain subgroup of women that cannot take birth control because they develop these similar blood clots. And the risk is very low. If we have women that are younger than 50 years old, we do recommend that they consult with their primary care provider before getting the vaccine to make sure that they don't have any of those other disorders prior to getting the vaccine. But other than that, it is safe, it is effective. The good news is now that we know that's an issue, we know how to effectively treat it. And so we're able to successfully treat it and help people recover from those blood clots, but they are still a danger and they are still a risk. And so just knowing that if you're a woman and you're under 50 years old, consult with your primary care provider before you get it. But the Janssen vaccine is safe, it's effective. We will be giving it at the clinic this Saturday. We have 500 doses, first come, first serve, for anyone who is 18 and older. And then we're out. So get there early and bring all of your friends, because we do want to bring more vaccines to our community so we can increase that percentage to reach that 70% threshold.
Definitely. And again, this is the YWCA in Midtown, so the one that's on Lake Street. It's completely free, happening from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. this Saturday, May 22nd. It's a walk-in event, so you don't have to register. You don't have to do anything like that. The vaccine that they'll be administering is the Johnson & Johnson. But again, Adriene has already dispelled, it is safe, it is effective, and it's not actually created by even the Johnson & Johnson company that we're familiar with. It's an actual company, medicine company that created the vaccine. And it's put together by Children's Minnesota, the YWCA, in collaboration with AALF, the Coalition of Asian American Leaders, Latino Lead, Linking Leaders, Minnesota Community Care, the Minnesota Department of Health, Northpoint Health and Wellness, Pimental Relief Services, and the Taway Foundation, as well as Congresswoman Ilhan Omar. So this is a community collaboration across multiple races, cultures, ethnicities, different organizations, and everyone is coming together to do this because they believe in it. And I am actually, I have to double check, I may have to work Saturday evening. I'll for sure be at the event, so I'll see you there, Adriene.
Yes, that would be great. Yes, it's from 10 to 3.
Yes.
There'll be food. We're trying to get a DJ to come to keep everyone in a jovial mood. So it will be a fun event and not just come and we're going to stab you and you're going to go.
Well, here's the thing. If I don't have to DJ that night, I'll get vaccinated at the event. So
there you go.
That, you know, that will be my commitment to community, because I do think it's important that we lead and show people. And I've been very vocal about my hesitancy and my concerns. And also, I'm still getting vaccinated. I'm ready to see my grandmother and hug her. In fact, my grandmother got the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. So we're definitely looking forward to that. And thank you, Adriene, for always keeping us up to date on what is happening as it relates to COVID. Any other additional information you want folks to know? I know there's been a lot of changes lately.
No, just if you have small children or younger children under 18 that you want to get vaccinated, we'll have someone at the clinic that can help with registering them to receive their vaccine at Children's. So that is also a possibility. So bring the whole family. We'll be prepared to serve everyone in the community.
Yes, and I also just got a text from James Burrows saying that I can also DJ at the vaccine clinic. So I think I just got double booked, and I'll be vaccinated all at the same time. So it'll be a good time, and I'll see you there. Thank you, Adriene, for joining us. Oh man, God bless our producers and community partners who send me updates in real time. This is certainly a live show for sure. Now, moving on, it's been about a month since former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin was found guilty on all counts in the murder of George Floyd. And while many can be credited for this historic conviction, as the judges, the jurors, the witnesses, local and global protesters, we absolutely have to give our roses to the prosecution prosecution team for doing something that's never been done before. So here to unpack the prosecution of Derek Chauvin and the impact of George Floyd, Black leadership in Minnesota, we're going to be talking with Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison. So Keith, please welcome. There you are. Thank you, Keith. Welcome to Black Life Amplified.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm very pleased to be with you.
Great to have you here. So when I first met you, you were Congressman Keith Ellison, and you're now Attorney General Keith Ellison. And we thought it was important.
Got a new job.
Yes, you got a new job. Congratulations, by the way.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, appreciate that.
Pretty big deal. Can you tell us about what an Attorney General does and why this was an important addition to your legacy?
Well, it's a really good question. First of all, know that I really don't care about titles. And so it didn't mean that much to me that I was a congressman. I mean, some people spend millions and millions of dollars to become one. To me, the only question ever is, how do you serve best, right? And so when the opportunity to run for Attorney General showed up, I jumped at that because it allowed me to get closer to the fight, right? And as Attorney General, there are every single state in the United States has one plus territories. So that's DC, Virgin Islands, and other territories. So there's like 57 attorneys general. 43 of them are elected by the people of the state. And the Attorney General in those 43 states works differently than the federal government, because in the federal government, the president appoints the Attorney General. Whereas in the state of Minnesota and 43 other states, the governor runs for election, the Attorney General runs for election. So you can have a Republican governor and a Democratic Attorney General, or vice versa. And this is what they call a divided executive. So what do we do? Well, one thing we do is we represent the people of the state in all litigation. So if ever the state of Minnesota is suing anyone, my name's on the pleading. And so if I believe that Comcast is being unfair to customers, I'll sue them, and I have. If I believe that CenturyLink is being unfair, I will sue them, and I have. If I believe Juul, the vape company, is being unfair and wrong, I'll sue them, and I am. ExxonMobil suing them too, Frontier suing them. And we got a lot of people who were taken to court. This week, we're taking to court a guy named Stephen Meldahl, who we believe and we allege has been unfair to mostly African-American tenants in his properties in North Minneapolis. So that lawsuit's going on now. And so that's what we do. We stand up for consumers. We stand up for people who feel like they've been treated unfairly, ripped off. We've started things to help consumers and workers. Like we started a wage theft unit, meaning that if you believe your wages have been stolen and your employer has not paid you properly, you call us and we'll get your money for you. And we have so many cases, we don't even have enough lawyers to do them. And so we help consumers, we help workers. And then we represent every single agency, board, and commission in the state of Minnesota. So we represent the Board of Medical Licensing. We represent the Board of Pharmacology. We represent the Board of Cosmetology, and there's over 100 of them, along with the Department of, the Pollution Control Agency, the DNR, all of that. We represent all them people. And then we are criminal prosecutors of the second, we're the backup prosecutors for the state. So the only cases that we can on our own prosecute are Medicaid fraud cases. We don't have to check in with anybody. We find it, we can prosecute it. We are they're out of the 87 counties in Minnesota. We basically have a relationship with them where it's like, if you have a conflict or you can't do the case, you can call us. And that's how I ended up in the George Floyd case. Mike Freeman, good friend of mine, said, look, I could use some help on this case. So we said, sure, we'll do it. The governor said we want us to get involved. So that's how we ended up involved. And we get involved in nearly every prosecution that way. We have a full staff of prosecutors and they stay busy. Usually they're prosecuting cases in Todd County, Otter Tail County, Morrison County, counties that if you live in the metro, you may not have ever heard of. But
right.
We're in metro, we're in greater Minnesota, because that's where you got county attorney's offices where there's 2 or 3 lawyers and they haven't seen a murder in 4 years, so they'll call us. But sometimes, even if it's a metro case and the case calls for us to help, we'll get in and help.
Okay. Have you been called to help on the Dante Wright case?
You know what? That's something I really can't talk on right now.
Okay.
When you're a prosecutor, there's a lot of things you can't say that you know, but you'd be in trouble if you ran your mouth about it. So
Got it.
let me just say that I consider the case extremely important, and stay tuned.
Stay tuned. Stay tuned. Well, before we get more into the work that you and your team have been doing to bring about justice in the state of Minnesota, the production team really thought it was important to just take a moment to give you your flowers and to say thank you to you and your team for your service, your commitment. They wanted to do a little throwback here, and so something you and I have in common is we've been able to connect with community through radio. You came on my radio show at KFAI when I was doing Soul Tools Radio years ago, and you also were a radio host at KMOJ.
I was.
Power Perspectives.
8 years, yeah.
For 8 years.
Yeah.
Consistently. And
you know who else was on there? Let me tell you who's on there. Resmaa Menakem.
Yes.
Who's the author of Grandmother's Hands.
Yes.
A #1 top-selling book in America.
Yes.
We were co-hosts. So Resmaa's killing it, man. And I don't think there's anybody who's a better in the area of the psychosocial trauma associated with Black lives than him. So very proud of him.
Yeah, no, he's doing phenomenal work, and it is transformative. And I think it's really important for people to see that, especially coming out of the state of Minnesota, that you can go on to do really phenomenal things in other parts of the country, other parts of the world. In fact, when I saw your book, My Country 'Tis of Thee, it was not in a Minnesota bookstore the first time I saw it. I was performing in DC at Busboys and Poets, and I saw it there, and that's actually where I got your book. And but I do want to go back to the radio point for a minute. And can you talk to me about the importance of local media, but also striking a balance, especially in the position you're at now? When I was researching and preparing for this interview, I'm watching CNN, you're talking with Gayle King, you're on all the late night shows, but you still stop and you make time for local media. Talk to us about the importance of striking a balance and making sure the narrative is accurate at all levels of media.
Well, we live in a world where everything is a commodity, meaning anything is bought and sold, and so much of it has more to do with sales than it does to do with truth. And that becomes more true the quote unquote higher you go. So if you really want to hear what's actually happening in an authentic way, you got to go local. And I'll tell you that whether I'm in Congress or in the state attorney general's office, or no matter what I'm doing, I'm always prioritizing local news because nobody in Oregon can vote for me, so the broadcast is going to Oregon. That's nice, but you know what? They can't vote for me, but everybody listening to Brittany Wright's show can, and we ask you to do so. I'm not on the ballot this year, but the bottom line is, it's true. It's at least authentic, because sometimes people say things that ain't true, but hopefully they really mean it. And there's more accountability, because if somebody tells you something that ain't right locally, you're like, wait a minute, we just fact checked that. That ain't true. So you can do that more easily at the local level, and then it's just more intimate. I mean, it's to me, I shop over there at the Cup Foods on Broadway because I live on the north side, and it's just it's good to run into people, say, yeah, I saw you on this, or you were on that, and I want to ask you something, blah 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 blah. And I always stop if I have the time, because I enjoy people, and I raise all 4 of my kids over here. My son Jeremiah is a council member, and we're very proud of him and his work. And, it's local is where it's at, and, a famous Speaker of the House of Representatives, Tip O'Neill, he said, all politics is local. And that's true. Nowadays, all politics is local and national, and even sometimes international. And so your show, Brittany, people might be listening to it in Accra, Ghana right now, because it's, you can get it online, right? So there really is no real limitation the way there used to be. Yeah, no, I definitely believe that. And I think the pandemic, actually, we have to thank for that a little bit. Sure. All of a sudden, Trevor Noah was broadcasting from his living room, as was, Gayle King and others. We all had to.
the playing field is leveled, but also when you think about situations like the one we're dealing with and calling for accountability in the murder of George Floyd, it happened locally, but it was an international event in terms of its impact in the media. Before we get to that, though, they wanted me to bring up a few other points in your career and
let's do it.
And to just celebrate you a little bit. So you made history as the first Muslim to be elected to Congress, first African-American representative from the state of Minnesota, the first Muslim and African-American elected to a statewide office. Talk to me, first and foremost, again, congratulations and thank you for your service, but talk to me about the hope that you have for this country and also just the courage that it takes to become something that you have never seen before.
Well, let me just say, when I ran for Congress and I ran for state AG, I never asked myself if any Black person or any Muslim person had ever done it before. I just thought that's a thing I could do to help community. And so I jumped out there. In fact, when I ran for Congress, I was quite certain I was not going to be the one who won. I got into the race because I thought that these people who probably are going to win, they don't want to talk about the Iraq war because it was all based on a lie. And I'm going to get in this and force them to debate this issue. And so, the person I thought was going to win is a guy who's a good friend of mine now. His name is Mike Erlandson, but he was the chief of staff for the congressman, the chosen favorite of the congressman, and the former state party chairman. And he was a friend of mine. So I just figured, he's probably going to win. But I got out there and started talking about how much money our country spends on these wars, then got into healthcare, then got into environment, then got into civil rights, then got into a lot of stuff, and I ended up winning. I was surprised, shocked as anyone. I've never gotten in politics out of ambition. In fact, I am the highest ranked official you've ever met who doesn't give a crap about ambition. I'm be just as happy to be just a little guy running my law office all on my own. I jumped into this because I believe that everybody should serve their community. And that's how come I'm in it. So, when I ran for office, a lady asked me for Congress, are you going to be the first Muslim? I'm like, I don't know. And I'm not running as the Muslim. I am a Muslim. I'm proud to be a Muslim. I think that, it is important for representation, for people to know that. But, it's like I always think of Jackie Robinson. He was the first Black player to play Major League Baseball, but he was also the best rookie that year. It's more important to be good than to be first. It's more important to be good than to be first. If you're first and you're not so good, you might ruin it for others.
Very true.
So I just say, don't worry about first. All that's ego stuff anyway. Just throw your shoulder into it, do the best you can, and that's it.
Well, you're definitely getting some love in the comments. I don't know if you see them flashing across the screen right now, but people are definitely affirming, one, that it was definitely your time, but two, it's about actually showing up and being excellent in doing the work. Did you ever feel like like, oh, I could be messing this up, or have those fears in the back of your mind? And if so, how did you push through them to just do your job?
I constantly think and rethink things. I'm always asking myself, was that right? Was that the right move? I check in with others. I consult. And so I might say, Brittany, what do you think about this? And if you say something that I think is right, I'm like, great. You never know where the lightning is going to strike. You never know where the next great idea is going to come from. And you have to be open to the great idea, because if your attitude is, I am the monopoly on all good ideas, only good ideas come from me. If you said it and it's a good idea, it's not so good because I didn't say it, then you're going to limit your ability to be effective. Got to stay open, got to stay humble. And that's why I think it's a good idea to stay in prayer and meditation, to remember that in the whole history of humanity, none of us are more than a dot, not even that long. And so all we should do is just stay humble, stay open to the next great idea. So like when I ran for Congress, all these, this guy asked me if I was going to swear in on the Quran. And I said, I haven't even won the race yet. I don't know what I'm swearing in. I might not swear on anything if I don't win.
Right.
But anyway, but then the guy said, well, but if you win, will you? I said, sure. And I hadn't thought much about it. The right wing went berserk. They went crazy. they lost their mind, they popped a blood vessel, you know how they do.
Yeah.
And so then somebody out of the blue wrote me a letter, said, you should swear in on Thomas Jefferson's Quran. I'm not going to tell anyone that was my idea. That wasn't my idea, but I know a good idea when I see one.
That's right. Yeah.
So the way I am able to be effective as to the degree that I am, is because I listen to people. Listen. If you listen, boy, the world opens up big.
Yes. And one of the ways in which we saw your ability to listen as well as to lead is in assembling what you called a team of Michael Jordans. It was the dream team that you put together.
They were awesome.
In convicting Officer Derek Chauvin. So what is your philosophy on just teamwork and collective impact? Because typically, you go with the basketball metaphor, you assemble a team of Michael Jordans. Well, you still need somebody in the post. You still need people who can play good D. You're going to need people who can sub in. So how are you able to make that work when everyone was such a strong attorney already?
Keep the main thing. What is the main thing? The main thing is we have to convict this guy. The main thing is we have to put on the very best case that we can. That's the main thing. Now you can make how many people and including me, make the main thing the side thing. So instead of trying to win this case, I have to be the one to give the opening statement. Well, wait a minute. Is that helping the main thing? Maybe Jerry Blackwell could do a better job than you. Maybe you should let him do it if the main thing is the main thing. But if the main thing is your ego and you always, then the task that you're trying to achieve is always secondary, which means that you've made the not important thing the main thing. Get out of your own way, receive help, consult widely. But then when you're the leader, don't be afraid to be the leader. When you got to make a call, you make that call. And you can't guarantee it's going to be right. You ought to be open to the fact that you could do better so you can adjust. But make the call, and it's better to do. Sometimes it's better after you consult, it's better to do something than to be paralyzed by inability to make a call. Make the call. If it works, okay, we know at least that's one way to do it. If it doesn't work, that ain't no way to do it. So do something. There's a phrase, fortune favors the bold. Fortune favors the bold. Fortune favors the bold. And I will tell you, Brittany, it is bold of you to get up here and do this show. But you could have been like, oh, I don't know, maybe people won't like it. Just do it.
Yeah.
They'll let you know.
Yes, they will.
And then you find out, maybe I'm really good at this. Maybe I'm not that good at this. Maybe I could be even better right?
Exactly.
And it might be some intern who goes to you and says, Brittany, I think it would be better if we did this. You're like, that's a good idea. Let's try that. You know what I mean? Yeah. But if you have to monopolize all the good ideas, you're going to limit your ability to be effective.
Yeah.
Open your mind, and here's the main thing of any leader. Focus, keeping the group focused. And by the way, I can't go tell Jerry Blackwell, how to do an opening statement. He knows how to do one better than me. But guess what? If you're the conductor of an orchestra, mm-hmm. you don't have to be the best flute player. You have to be the best orchestra conductor. Mm-hmm. And that means bring this in, calm that down. Now bring in the percussions. You've got to bring them in loud, bring them in strong. That's what you got to be good at. But don't think, oh, I'm the best violinist. You don't have to be the best violinist. You got to be the best at your job.
Yes.
And there's a lot of people who don't want to conduct the choir. They don't want to conduct the orchestra. They want to play the violin. They love the violin. They go to bed thinking about the violin. They wake up thinking about the violin, and all day long they think about the violin. You give them a little stick to conduct the choir, they're like, get that thing out of my face. I want to play the violin.
Yeah.
And so you got to find people, you want to have people who have the same level of passion as you do. And let me tell you, it's all about creativity, passion, and being open to the next great idea. And then people won't give you their ideas if you hog the credit for them ideas. You gotta say Jerry Blackwell's awesome. You gotta say Steve Schlischer's awesome. You gotta say the witnesses came through for us big time. You gotta say that the interns, 2 young women, they kind of remind me of you, Brittany. One of them's name is Natasha Robinson. The other one's name is Zuri Balkamon. They were the dynamic duo. The world did not see them. They were not on CNN, nor were they on 60 Minutes. But without them, they helped put together our case. There's an awesome sister named Lola Velasquez. You know, some folks know Lola. She's got a reputation out there, but she didn't present in the case, but she helped build out our medical case. And as you know, medical causation ended up being an important issue. So, I mean, you know, you got to give people credit where it's due. You know, and by the way, the more power you give away, the more you get.
Yeah.
Because if I tell you, you got a heck of a show, Brittany, you need to keep going with this. Thank you for having me on. Then you're like, okay, Keith's not such a bad guy. He gives credit where credit's due. I don't mind having him back on. But if I'm like, I did this and I did that and I'm so good and you're nobody, then next thing you know, I'm like, that guy's a jerk. I don't want him around me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you literally get power by giving it. And Brittany, when you give credit to people and you acknowledge their achievement, they now feel like you're a good person and they maybe can trust you.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And that has increased that has increased Brittany's ability to enlist an ally, which extends your ability to be effective.
Yeah, that's right.
Those are just a few thoughts.
Yeah. No, I agree. And when we had the conversation with our production team about having you on, I said, absolutely. I said, Keith will hire me to perform spoken word, at a DNC fundraiser, come on my show, will have me DJ. It's always, hey, Miss In fact, you offered me a job when I told you I was moving to Boston. I told you no, I turned it down, but I'm back.
My loss.
But you were right, because I'm back,
There you go.
And so that also was a lesson in, you were encouraging me. I see something in you and your legacy here.
That's right. Look, if you are a person, certainly if you're north of 40, always encourage the young people. If you don't, you're a jerk. I'm sorry. Sorry. If you're but even if you're younger than 40, well, to some people, Brittany, you're like an older lady,
I know, right? I feel like an older lady sometimes.
But like to some 15-year-old girl or boy, they're looking at you like, oh, Brittany's got it going on. Well, so always reach one, teach one. This is how we build community. It will not hurt you to make space for other folks, particularly if you can see that they got a lot to offer. Yes. My mom would say, look, we'll put a little bit more water in the gumbo. There's more cornbread. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Widen the table.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that is how we succeed. That is a winning strategy. And so I would say that that's where we got to go with it.
Well, speaking of winning strategies, are you going to be involved in the prosecution of the next 3 officers in the murder of Floyd? Okay. Absolutely.
We absolutely will. We're working hard. The trial date it was in August. Now it's in March 7th. There is a parallel prosecution in federal court. Our prosecution is for murder and manslaughter. The federal prosecution is for violation of civil rights.
Okay.
I don't know which one of us is going to try the case first. I think it was important for us to go first on the first case. I'm kind of agnostic as to the other ones, so we'll see. But there are 2 cases going on parallel, and we got them, and we're going to see them all the way through.
Okay. And those other 3 officers, will they be tried individually or as a collective?
I would be extremely disappointed if the court severed those cases.
Okay.
I was arguing the judge should trial 4 of them together. If we did that, it would be over.
Yeah.
But I mean, but now we got to go through this. It's dragged out. It's prolonged. It's one of those decisions that I thought should have been made differently.
Well, we will definitely be staying tuned. 2022 isn't as far away, as we think. Certainly.
Oh my God, it'll be here before you know it.
Yeah,
I believe it.
And I think our community could actually use a little bit of a break. It was a stressful, traumatic time. It did end with a little bit of justice in the conviction, but of course, true justice would be in our brother George Floyd still being here, right? And that incident never occurring, which is something that you talked about in previous interviews of, of course, as the Attorney General for the state of Minnesota, it's your job to make sure that we bring forth justice in the courtroom, but you really want to make sure that we're addressing the future of policing differently currently exist. So I want to ask you, I've interviewed your son, and we've talked about it, but I'm curious for you, where do you stand in the calls for abolishing the police versus defunding the police versus police reform? Where do you fit in that kind of polarizing conversation?
I am 100% in favor of public safety. We need to refocus the conversation on public safety. Mm-hmm. How do we preserve and extend life? How do we do that? How is that done? Does it sometimes require the services of people who look a lot like what we call police? Well, sure. I mean, there's still murder, rape, robbery, school shootings. These things are happening, and we need somebody who can address that. And that may require knowledge of firearms and those kind of tactics. But what about other stuff? What about a fake 20? Do we really need to march in there guns a-blazing? I mean, people do. Our economy needs to prevent false passing of bills and counterfeiting. But, do we need somebody guns a-blazing who's, is that what we need? Or if we know that about 50% of the people who are killed in deadly force encounters with police are in the middle of a mental health crisis. Don't we need some dual response so that somebody can do something about that? I mean, in the whole issue of sexual assault and rape, we need more people who understand the trauma of this. I mean, we have literally thousands of untested rape kits.
Which is wild.
Well, I mean, when women say, me too, or believe women, let's believe them to test the rape kits.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so, so I think, I really do believe that defund the police was always really kind of an internet hashtag. Mm-hmm. It really wasn't a full-fleshed program. And I also think that when you talk about abolishing the police, I think that, look, there may be a time in human history where human beings are so loving and good to each other that we don't need the police. Mm-hmm. I don't see that in the short term. Mm-hmm. I think what we need to do is focus on public safety. And if there is an active shooter, you need somebody who can deal with an active shooter. If there's somebody is a nonviolent property crime but does need to be investigated, let's do that. What can we do to prevent crimes? And we're seeing a spike in violent crime.
Yes.
If all we do is think in terms of status quo policing, what is the answer? More cops, more jails. That's what we think. More cops, more jails, more militarization of the police.
Yeah.
But if we think in terms of how do we make people safer, we might come up with some better ways to do that. Mm-hmm. So, for example, there's a woman named Deborah Prothrow-Stith. Please put that in the chat, someone. Okay. Deborah Prothrow-Stith. She wrote a book called Murder is No Accident. And this is a Black woman, doctor. She worked in the public health department at Harvard University and wrote a book about how basically murder and violent crime can be treated like a public health crisis.
Yes.
What if we looked at murder the way we looked at DUI? Well, what would we do then? Well, maybe one thing we do is we try to get people to not drink and drive. Mm-hmm. Right? Maybe what we would do is require treatment for people who are caught drinking and driving. So what if we had a system where if you are caught up in attempting to commit a violent crime, you have to go to some sort of violence reduction effort. You have to look at the family of the victims and listen to people whose lives you have destroyed.
Yes.
In our criminal justice system, you can shoot somebody maybe kill them, and never deal with the family at all. You get arrested, you say, I did it, or you have a trial, and then you get convicted and you go on your merry way to prison. Maybe for that long, you got to deal with a victim impact statement, but mostly you don't have to deal with them. What if you had a system that said, we still see you as a member of our community, but you rip the fabric out of that family and you destroy those people's lives. You have to listen to what they have had to deal with financially, emotionally, psychologically. What if we really did that? And then you really begin to sink in. My father, I wanted him to be at my wedding. He's not here because you killed him. Now the tough guy ain't so tough.
Yeah.
Now the tough guy is crying, bawling when he begins to confront the harm that he caused somebody else.
Yes.
This is the kind of thing that we need to focus on, I think. And so what does that have to do with defund the police, all that rhetoric stuff? I don't think it's asking the right question. The right question is, how can we be safer? In the last week or so, there's shootings, and one of them I hear took the life of a 6-year-old girl today.
Yeah, she passed away this morning, and there are 2 others at North Memorial under the age of 10 fighting for their life right now.
Now, what about that? If you were the one, now I'm going to tell you, in the Mayan Burrell case, I'm certain that Mayan Burrell did not participate in that shooting of Taisha Edwards. But the person who did it said they did it and is in prison doing life for it. Maybe better to say, to really go into our prisons and say, instead of you just ignoring what you did to hurt somebody, making yourself hard as a rock so you never have to feel what you did, you have to feel what you did. That might make a difference. And maybe, it might mean, and like, how would you feel? Yes, I shot at some people and I killed that man and he's never coming back. He will not stand up at his daughter's wedding. He will not be at his son's graduation. His wife has been economically devastated because he was a breadwinner in the household. She's now dependent upon public services and she's deeply depressed because she can't see the world without him. And you did this to them. That kind of thing is that's scarier than going to prison.
Yeah.
That's scarier than going to prison. And so I think that we need to refocus on public safety by the way, I do believe that we need transformation in policing. Our police system has not really changed in literally hundreds of years. A lot of Black people will tell you, oh, policing started with slave catchers. They're right about that. It was in Charleston, South Carolina, where the first municipal patrol, really got founded, and it was all around catching Black people who were in captivity. Of course, it added on when a lot of white immigrants from other countries were doing strikes. And so the bosses paid police to break up the strike. And then, of course, we know there's a lot of history to policing, but we've never really said, okay. Policing grew up around slave catching, Indian fighting, putting down strikes, and it got a little bit of professionalization, but it's really kind of the same model. It's very militaristic, lieutenants and sergeants and all of that. What if we just said, what does public safety really look like? How would we design it if we started fresh? I'm sure, given that people are still how they are, we would need some folks who kind of look like cops. But maybe we would come up with some better ways to keep people safe. We are stuck in a lack of imagination on how to keep people safe. And much of our policing system today really is a system, it's just a system to maintain the racial vertical hierarchy. Sorry, but not all of it. And you got great people in it. Like, I think Rondo's a good guy. I like Rondo. I think he's a good leader to start with. There's others. And I'm always, but like, you take a system, like, have you ever heard of Carrie O'Horn? Carrie O'Horn is a woman who was a police officer like 15 years ago in Buffalo, New York. She saw one of her colleagues, who happened to be Caucasian, beating the crap out of somebody without any legal basis to do so. She intervenes to stop him. Not as she's not commended. She's not thanked. She is fired. She is condemned, and she loses her pension. And she just now got it back. Carriol Horn. It's Carriol. Maybe somebody can put it in the chat to read more about Carriol Horn. She's fired because she basically does what officers are being required to do now, which is having a duty to intervene when you see an officer doing something wrong. Let me tell you, as a lawyer, if I heard that a lawyer was sleeping with one of his clients and taking trust money out of a trust that you were required to oversee, I wouldn't back that person. I'd be the first one to call the bar examiners and the Board of Professional Responsibility on them. And if you're a doctor and you got somebody who's leaving sponges in people's bodies after surgery, no doctor is going to say, oh yeah, that's my boy, I'm not going to tell. But in policing, it's like, oh, well, you know, we can't stop what we know is wrong. And if anybody like you or me say policing needs reform, oh, you hate the police. I don't hate the police any more than I hate doctors, simply because I'm complaining about malpractice.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so that's it, you know, but like, good, look, but I understand the left-right divide. And if you really want to sound super duper woke, you got to say defund the police. I'm not playing that game. And at the same time, if you really want to be a tough conservative law and order, you just want to say blue lives matter. It's both of them, I think, need to let go of the ideology and come down to public safety. What are we going to do about the rape kits, folks?
Mm-hmm.
You know? So that's my take on that.
Okay.
I know it's low. I kind of went on a rant. I'm sorry.
It was a great one. I do think, you know, to your point, you started off with saying, you know, defund the police, abolish the police. Those are hashtags. And that's important because digital media is how, especially a lot of young leaders engage, how they're able to mobilize and get information spread really quickly. And I think it's a really important tool. And I think in modern day advocacy today, we have to think about the messaging and the branding of it and how does it travel on the internet? Because at the end of the day, it's going to be our young people that carry our messaging forward, that are going to be the leaders of this change, that are going to be the ones that say, yes, we're in favor of the solution, or absolutely not. This is going to be the next way in which our communities are marginalized. And if it's not something that they can contextualize within these digital platforms, it may not be as effective. And so I do think it's about public safety, and our community, especially right now, is grieving the loss of this baby who just lost her life, these other two children who are fighting for their lives, and countless other families. I've lost 3 family members in North Minneapolis. So I know gun violence is absolutely real. Community violence is absolutely real. But when we think about public safety, I do think that a lot of people look at how much violence, even just in the city of Minneapolis or even the city of St. Paul, is happening right now. And they're saying the current system is not working.
Right. But see, the one thing I want to just say to you, I agree 100% that the hashtags were important. They certainly got people's attention. What I would say, with nothing but love, is put something with it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So now you've provoked a conversation. Good job. Let's follow it up with some meat. And I think that's the right thing to do. And I know many are. Let me tell you, BLM, they have a whole program. There's others that have done good work on that. So, but let's start really unpacking and talking about what comes after the hashtag. What is the program?
Absolutely.
And in fairness, many of them who do that, you know, I mean, I think you should try to get, what's my girl's name? Alicia Garza on one day.
Okay.
And if you'd like, I could help you get her.
Yes,
the bottom, she helped start BLM. She really has gone the extra mile to say, here's what we mean by Black Lives Matter.
Yep.
And that is the kind of responsible leadership I think the moment calls for. Let me also mention that it is also true that there's been a spike in violent crime in every American major city.
Yeah.
It is important to understand that this is not simply a local phenomenon. This is not simply because Minneapolis needs more cops. This is way more complicated than that. It probably has something to do with COVID.
Yes.
It probably has some, and I will argue to you that when there is no trust between police and community, that actually facilitates violent crime. Why?
Yes.
I'll tell you why, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Say I'm a victim of violent crime, but I don't trust the police. Do I call them? Probably not, or I'm reluctant. If I know who did commit the violent crime and there's no trust, do I call the police? No. So I don't report, I don't share information, and so it creates an environment of impunity.
Yeah.
So that I know that if you want to commit a violent crime, go where the Black people live, because they don't trust the police. They don't want to call them. They don't believe in them. And they think the police are not on their side. That's why police brutality is so damaging, not just to the person who suffered, but to the fabric of trust in the community. Mm-hmm. When George Floyd sat up under the knee and under and it was under the back of those other officers, they did more than just kill George Floyd. They killed a 9-year-old girl's belief in them.
Absolutely.
They killed three 17-year-old girls, Darnella Frazier and 2 others, belief that the police are going to help me.
Right.
That's what they did. They destroyed trust, and that is extremely detrimental. And so my thought is, whenever you're a police officer, you got to ask yourself, you got to say, this badge, this uniform, I'm carrying the trust of the community as I put this on. And if I break trust and act lawlessly and unjustifiably, I am going to make people not want to cooperate with me, so I won't be able to do my job very effectively. If you address police brutality and excessive force, you will build trust, and you will have more people enlisted in the fight to reduce violent crime.
I definitely agree. The trust has been violated for so incredibly long, and I think that is why so many of our community leaders are moving even beyond reform, and they're just saying, what else can be done, and the positive that is coming out of even the existing tragedy that it has involved these young people is people are stepping up and they're saying no more. A lot of times
Right.
we see people mobilize when it comes to police brutality. And this was a real challenge that I had. I'm very active in my community, but no one wanted to march when my cousins were murdered. We don't do that for community violence. And it doesn't mean that we're outraged, but it's
true.
something
You're right.
different when someone puts on a badge to protect and serve your community, whose salary is paid for by your tax dollars, and they're the ones that are doing it. And so we have all of this compound trauma and all of this violence happening. And ultimately, at the end of the day, we want to know when our children are jumping on the trampoline in the backyard, when they're in the back seat eating McDonald's, when they're outside playing on the playground, that they're going to be safe.
Yep.
They deserve that. And so I do hope that there's justice for those young people, as well as for that the officers who are abusing their positions of power are being held accountable. We are just about at time, but before we wrap up here, I wanted to ask you about the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act.
Thank you for asking me that.
Yes. So tell us about the bill. Why is it important, and is it going to pass? What do you think?
I believe it's going to pass, but you should know that I'm kind of generally over-optimistic.
Yeah.
I'm an optimistic person. The cynics would say, oh, that's not going to pass. But I think that it's very important for everybody listening to Black Life Amplified to call Tina Smith and Amy Klobuchar and tell them they have to do every single thing they can to get this bill passed. It would be great to have it passed before May 25th, which is the anniversary of George Floyd's death.
Yes.
It would be critical. What it would do is it would set up a registry so we can actually get a grip on how many people are killed by the police. It would eliminate the use of a number of chokehold measures. It would change the way qualified immunity it works so that police officers could be be civilly accountable more often. And there are a whole bunch of things. I mean, I have a sheet that just goes up and down. If somebody could put in the comments, a cite to the bill, that would be super helpful. But I would say that it's critical, important. Look, we won a case. I'm not putting it down. I'm just saying it's one case. Mm-hmm. We won one baseball game out of a 174 game season. Okay. Yeah. Now we need you to push the city council, the school board, the state legislature, and Congress to really get this thing going so we can have meaningful reform. And I also want to ask for something else. See, look, Congress is great. I was in Congress. Congress is so great that I left it voluntarily. Okay, so it's okay. It's good, but it's not the whole bag of beans. The state legislature, we need to reform there. And on the city level, we need to reform there.
Yes.
The last city council, the city council in there now, challenged the budget of $193 million a year for the police department. Got it down to 170 some. And for the first time, really put money behind community crime prevention. That is good. That's a good thing. Look, they can run the police department on the money they have, but putting money on an upstream measure, that's a good thing.
Right.
I say that every city council member I know of who stood up for reform is now being challenged. Less than a year from when George Floyd was murdered on the streets of this city, and he was murdered, and I can say murdered because we proved to a jury that he was murdered.
Yes.
Is not the time to say, oh, no more police reform. We've barely done any.
Yeah.
Don't take out the people who are fighting to have a better relationship between police community. Don't do that. That's going the wrong direction. If you want to see more violent crime and police brutality, stop the wheels of change and say, let's go back to a whole lot of cops with all their MRAPs and all their military stuff and all the stuff that they do. And I think that they like me personally, so I don't fear being mistreated. I'm telling you, it's the wrong direction. That's why I'm supporting all the candidates who are for police reform. Not that I'm not anti-police. In fact, I admire a lot of police like Rondo, who sat up in that courtroom and said, that's wrong. That's not our values. But we can't just have him there, just him and a few others. We've got to create a police department where it is the culture and the norm to truly protect and serve. And we don't have that right now. Bob Kroll, do we have any more time?
Go in.
Well, Bob Kroll, who just quit, that dude, when I got to be in Congress in 2006, he was talking to a group of police officers doing a training. In the training, he says to them, oh, people in Minneapolis are really dumb. We're at war with the terrorists, and they just elected one to Congress.
Wow.
A brave Black woman named Gwen Gunther, a police officer, says, are you saying that Congressman Ellison is a terrorist? He said, well, la, 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 la. Then he lies about it. She says, he said it. You damn right he said it. I will stand on the fact that he said it. And he and Chief Dolan, I think it's Dolan. I might get the name wrong. One of the chiefs had to issue me a written apology. That's the mentality of Kroll. And that mentality has not been pulled out of the Minneapolis Police Department. They elected him as their president. Yeah,
of the Federation.
So think about that. Think about being a good officer who wants to help and serve. And there are many. And you're putting up with this bully, racist jerk. I mean, that's what we're dealing with, guys. So I ask people, don't say all the police this, all the police that. There are people in the police department who are living for reform. They want to be better. They join the force to help people. And then there's others who ain't got no sense of that. No plans on that. So that's what I want to say on that one. Brittany, I'm so proud of you. Bless you, dear. Anybody who says young people aren't doing great things, it's wrong, wrong, wrong. You are getting it done out here. And I'm so proud of you. I'm just thrilled to be on the show with you. And I just want you to know that if you're doing it, I'm supporting it, period.
Well, thank you.
It'd be nice to learn about what it is later, at least. But
on the back
just
end.
say, Chief, you're in, right? Yeah. What? So you go
Got
for
it.
girl.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show, for all of the work that you have been doing. It was such a relief to hear that the AG's office was taking over the Chauvin case. And for, I think, a lot of people who had no hope that there would be a conviction, it gave them a little bit of hope. And even there were some that doubted the entire way until we got that phone call on Tuesday or Wednesday that the jury had made their decision. And I think people are starting to see that things are changing. you know.
I didn't even know then, Brittany. I needed the verdict read before I was like, you sure? You sure? You sure? Am I hearing right? So honestly, I definitely sympathize with anybody who's been skeptical, but let me tell you, skeptics don't change the world. Hopeful, optimistic dreamers do. Keep fighting. Don't quit.
There it is. Keith Ellison, Attorney General for the state of Minnesota. You've been watching Black Life Amplified. Make sure you tune in 2 weeks, Wednesday, June 5th. We're going to be talking about what's happening. Wednesday, June 2nd. We're going to be talking about the ongoing violence taking place within our community. As we mentioned, 3 children under the age of 10 shot in Minneapolis. One of them just lost her life this morning. We're going to be talking about the ways in which community is mobilizing to call for peace, prayer, and an immediate change in public safety. And these, of course, are not the only 3 issues we'll be focusing on. There are many incidents and violations as it relates to public safety in the state of Minnesota. So we're going to unpack that Wednesday, June 2nd, 11:30, right here on Black Life Amplified. Thank you so much for watching. And until next time, take care of yourself.